Let's go to the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, and speak to Chris Alexander, who is the former Deputy Director for Eastern Europe at Canada's Foreign Ministry. Chris, welcome to the programme. Always good to see you. The nature of rolling news is, of course, to examine every minute detail and the latest development. But I wanted, first of all, just to pull back a little bit, because of your experience at the Foreign Ministry with Eastern European affairs, and ask you about Vladimir Putin's aim here, because there is some analysis that this may well be the standoff over Ukraine, the Russian president's very last chance to reshape his country's security relationship with Western Europe in a post-Soviet world.
I think there is strong evidence that that's the way he sees things. We know that he was one of those traumatized by his own personal experience when he was a KGB officer in East Germany at the time the Berlin Wall was falling and the Soviet Union was teetering. And he obviously committed to himself that he would do everything in his power to reverse that. As president, he said the breakup of the Soviet Union was the greatest catastrophe of the 21st century, a statement that almost no one outside of Russia would agree with. And he's since gone on to invade Georgia and then Ukraine, 7% of the territory taken in 2014. And then he wrote this essay last summer claiming that Russians and Ukrainians were one people, and really making a very selective reading of history, something that harkens back to dictators earlier in the 20th century who wanted to extinguish the sovereignty of neighboring countries. So he has this ambition. We've seen it. The question is, can he bring it off without undermining his own authority, his own credibility at home? Russia has not had a good 10 years in economic terms. Standards of living has stagnated. There hasn't been growth. There's a lot of poverty, and it's growing in many parts of Russia. And this will make things worse because if he invades Ukraine on a larger scale, as most of us think, because it will plunge Russia into a deeper isolation. They really have absolutely no friends on this issue, no allies on this issue, and it would be an unprecedented act of aggression since 1945.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're talking about the possible internal repercussions for President Vladimir Putin. I mean, considering his record in elections and the way his party has behaved towards political opponents, he may, of course, feel he can ride that out. But when you look at the external pressures then being placed upon him, I mean, isn't the crux of the matter here that almost every single NATO head of state has said that, look, we're not actually going to put our own boots on the ground, and people in Ukraine seem to understand that why would Western forces lay their lives on the line for their country? So NATO almost becomes impotent in the face of a possible Russian invasion.
It does, in that you're quite right. Ukraine occupies this ambiguous space. It's certainly not part of Russia, and it's certainly not a member of NATO. But mostly because of Putin's invasion in 2014, public opinion has swung in one direction only in recent years. And this recent saber-rattling mobilization of forces has accelerated that swing. Ukrainians want to be part of the alliance. They want to be part of the European Union. They want to have friends that will protect them. And they are, while not in NATO, one of the most pro-NATO, pro-alliance, pro-democracy populations on the European continent right now. And that's a very powerful force. And I think Vladimir Putin understands this as he ponders, and must understand this, as he ponders the decision whether to give the order to unleash his forces, which may happen as soon as next month.
And what happens if the sanctions, if they were ever to come to pass, and they're apparently extremely extreme, the ones that are being prepared in case they have to be imposed on Russia, depending on its actions in Ukraine? What happens if those sanctions lead to an even worsening situation for Russia's economy and potentially its collapse?
Well, if they come after an invasion is triggered, I don't think they're of much use. There will be a lot of pain for the Russian people. There'll be isolation for Putin. And Ukrainians will fight. And it may be a very bloody conflict, as Boris Johnson was indicating in the clip you showed earlier. But it would be far better to implement the sanctions right now. on the strength of the threats Putin has made, and for all of those who believe in democracy, in the importance of freedom and free institutions, to be arming and supporting Ukraine in more substantive ways right now, because that's the only chance we have to deter this invasion. We need Western public opinion, European public opinion, Turkish public opinion, American public opinion to swing even further onto the side of Ukrainians and trigger more concrete support so that they can hold out longer, even if Russia launches this onslaught.
Chris, thank you so much indeed for the analysis. Really appreciate it. Chris Alexander speaking to us from Nairobi.